Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Telemedia Vodcast with myself, Jarvis Todd, publisher of Telemedia Magazine, and the editor-in-chief, Mr. Paul Skeldon. And I can tell you that the first topic of conversation, and I should caveat this by saying, who would be an acquirer or a merchant these days? Goodness me. Because the news is that Visa's VAMP comes into effect. And what does that mean for the telemedia payments ecosystem? We are going to tell you. Essentially, Visa have radically changed how it tracks fraud and chargebacks, opting for a mad ratio of frauds to transactions. And the threshold is very low, as you might expect. So everything's been condensed down to a single number, which could be the difference between success or failure, or even termination of your agreements and your ability to sell services using Visa. So, Paul, do you want to start dive
Yeah,
into this one, my friend?
it's a tricky one, isn't it? So yes, VAMP, Visa Acquirer Monitoring Program. It replaces a couple of other free Visa fraud monitoring and dispute monitoring programs that have been in place up until now. It's basically looks at fraud and chargebacks. And what they've done is they've combined it all into one simple number, as you say, which is the VAMP ratio, which is the ratio of frauds and chargeback against transaction value. And the threshold was in the old days when they roughly did this sort of thing in various different ways around 0.9%. It's now dropped to 0.3%. So there's a very tight margin of error. So any kind of fraud or increased chargebacks could very well see a merchant go above that number very easily and could well have their services terminated. Now, the upshot is that in telemedia, they have quite a bit of chargebacks. There's quite a lot of disputes and low fraud and friendly fraud and just people accidentally doing it and not wanting to and things, not necessarily anything dodgy. It just has a slightly higher level. And of course, that's going to push a lot of these people who are using Visa or where they use Visa over this threshold and could see them cut off.
And so this doesn't account for legitimate customer confusion. It's just been broken down into a
No,
single
it's just
number.
well, it appears to be just a simple number. And where it gets complicated is that Visa is really putting the onus on acquirers and payment service providers rather than the merchants. So they are going to be much more strict about who they take on, which means that sort of, people offering sort of chat services and, any adult services and gaming and all sorts of things where there is often a kind of pushback from consumers. They sign up, they do it, then they change their mind, and it results in a chargeback. They're going to be much more resistant to taking those on, which could be, a problem for trying to get Visa as a payment mechanism for a lot of telemedia services, which is, a shame because we're moving, as we've seen at our events last year in particular, towards more credit card billing for services, particularly through wallets and stuff. So it's potentially could be problematic. I think it's only really just come into force properly. So it's hard to know what the actual impact will be on the ground. But it's something that telemedia companies need to certainly be well aware of and need to talk to their acquirers and payment service providers about where they stand with all this.
So it's the shift in accountability that is really fundamental here,
Mm.
because acquirers are now going to be super responsible for the VAMP number. And they're going to be worried about that, right? So they're going to be a lot more conservative about who they on board.
Yeah, absolutely.
As you say, we've seen such a big opportunity for a broader range of payment mechanisms in the telemedia space, including what can be done with credit card. And this is kind of broadsiding that a little bit, isn't it?
Potentially, yes. It certainly has come at a bad time with sort of relation to that sort of uptick in use of card payments. I think the thing is it remains to be seen how that will be applied. I think what will happen is that there is actually an upside to this in a weird way for companies that we have in our telemedia family. For one, there's going to be I think an increased investment in sort of fraud prevention and monitoring and all that. So a lot of the companies, the Avinas and MCPs and Impellos of the world, actually this is potentially quite beneficial to them. I mean, it's something that telemedia companies are going to have to sort of use them to assess their sort of level of risk and monitor what they're doing. I think also it does point to possibly the fact that alternative payment mechanisms aside from Visa, have a beneficial side to them. So carrier billing, for instance, suddenly again looks a little bit more attractive. And
Yeah.
there's the HTTPS stuff that we talked about, or I talked about with Ansel in a previous podcast. Does have some issues potentially for carrier billing, but they're resolvable with a bit of effort and a bit of work on behalf of the industry. So we could see more carrier billing because of this visa problem and the growth of other alternative payment mechanisms like sort of direct bank transfers and all that. So there is an upside, I think, in a way, but it's one to watch. It's one to flag up, I think, to people listening that you really do need to check out your VAMP status, particularly with any acquirers you work with and your payment service providers.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, with all these things, the best intentions, of course, anybody in the telemedia industry will tell you that the success is based on good customer experience. And, we don't like fraud. It's bad for business. But I guess what you just said makes a lot of sense. And again, going back to the, huge amounts of support and the way that the likes of Vina, MCP and Palo have been hardwired into the infrastructure of the
Mm,
telemedia industry means that companies that invest in pre-dispute systems, alerts, real-time refunds, better descriptors, all that kind of stuff,
yeah.
um, are going to do that. That's it's at least goes some way to mitigating the effects, potentially unfair effects of VAMP if, just one bad campaign all of a sudden, or some friendly fraud or
Mm.
customer, misunderstandings all of a sudden send you into the wrong side of the threshold. So yeah, I think in that respect, it's obviously going to be a huge focus on
Mm.
fraud prevention, even more so.
I
Uh,
think so. I think it's another area of fraud prevention that we need to sort of be more aware of. I think the sort of like the key thing from this for me is that it's not really about all telemedia is full of dodgy services, lots of fraud and lots of complaints. It's about how the threshold is now so low that you don't have to go wrong very much for it to become a problem. And I think that's the key thing here is that sort of you can be running the most legitimate, clean, beautifully organized service. You only need one too many chargebacks, and
yeah.
you fall foul of the sort of limits.
And I guess that also means you'll probably see some consolidating in the payment service provider space, where you get
Yeah,
high risk acquirers will probably shrink their portfolios. Mid risk acquirers will probably pull out of certain,
yeah,
market verticals that they weren't too sure about or that are potentially problematic. And you might well find, which goes back to probably a scenario that we saw 20 odd years ago, where you get specialist payment service providers who become more valuable because they're managing, riskier verticals at scale. But of course, they'll probably be charging more money for that. Um,
yeah, absolutely. But it's a business opportunity, and I think for smaller players who may struggle with this on their own, trying to team up with someone who specializes in it, definitely. So yeah, I think that's another opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose just to conclude, you could look at this and say this is just a very annoying, very obstructive development in the payment services landscape. Another body blow to the payment for digital content. But ultimately, I think we've seen consistent challenges across this particular aspect of the telemedia industry, and one way or t'other, solutions are found. And I'm not feeling like this is terminal. Something that with collaboration, skills, expertise, specialization, probably will be overcome. And I suppose ultimately the sentiments for doing it are good for business in that consumer confidence is really, really important. I think in the short term, yeah, it does look to be a bit of a bit of a drag, given that, like as you say, Visa is certainly becoming a big part of the mix in terms of payment strategies. So I guess we just have to watch this space. I mean, it's probably worth just pointing out to everyone before we go on to the next story that all of these things will be discussed at Telemedia Johannesburg, which, for those of you who don't know, is going to be held in at the Houghton Hotel in the beautiful city of Johannesburg. And that will be on the 2nd to the 4th of June. It's our first foray into the sub-Saharan African market. Lots and lots of opportunities for established telemedia players from around the world to really get face to face with, the very senior, very important group of players from across the African region, which, as we all know, is massively exciting and a huge opportunity for the industry. So momentum is really gathering for that event. So please do go to our website, Telemedia Johannesburg, wtevent.com, and you'll find all the information you need there. The first set of speakers has just been announced, and everything from MNO issues right the way through to payment issues to content issues and marketing issues are going to be discussed in a stellar lineup of speakers on various panels, workshops, and conferences. So please do start making your plans to get down there.
Yeah, Joburg is going to be great. I think it is a great opportunity actually to talk about this visa issue because it will, affect companies worldwide. It's not just Europe or UK or any particular region. Yeah, it'd be great to talk about it there. It'd be great to hear what you guys think listening. So do get in touch about your thoughts and feelings around visa and VAMP. And I guess thank you for joining us and listening to us talk about it. So we'll see you again soon.